So after being majority leader, being minority leader must kind of blow.
There's pros and cons. But you know what? Sometimes it makes you work harder, and it's only a matter of time before we're back.
And how much time?
Not this November, but next. So we're sworn in January.
So
you can applaud that, somebody, please. Come on.
What is the best perk of being majority leader that you don't get as minority leader?
Yeah, it's not whether you're in leadership. The best part of this job is when you walk into that Capitol and where you're serving. Think about the debates that have happened, the 13th Amendment on that floor, the day they live in infamy, the civil rights movement, and others. You have the privilege, less than 12,000 people have ever had the privilege to be a member of Congress. But you're able to be a voice for an individual in your district that's probably struggling with an agency, and you got to change it. Or you're providing a medal to a World War II vet. You're taking a debate that you might disagree with the other side, but you're trying to find common ground somewhere in between.
Okay.
There are ups and there are downs. Yes.
Yeah. Speaking of common ground, both sides said that they wanted a $2 trillion infrastructure package. What is the outlook for a package of that size?
The great thing of being in my job, you make policy in the world of politics. So you want to see what you can achieve. So everybody will focus on how much money you have. I would first focus on where we unite, okay? So things that both sides would want. I'd like to see reforms so the roads get built faster. I think everybody wants infrastructure. You start with that.
So reforms, you're talking about like permitting?
Permitting, yeah.
Okay.
You have right-of-ways already, and you want to study it for 10 years. I mean, the average takes 7 years, so you vote on something, never see it, and it costs more money in the process. So I would find, if it comes to money, where do we first unite? Well, there is a bill out there called the GAIN Act, and it has from the Black Caucus to the Freedom Caucus. So you have a big group of Democrats and a big group of hard conservatives that actually agree on a bill that co-sponsored. And that's $100 billion. And what it does, it takes excess assets of government and it sells it, and then it takes that money and it puts it into the 100 poorest districts for their infrastructure. Because don't you want to build the entire nation and been falling behind? That's $100 billion right off the table. I'd start there and I'd build from there where we agree and see what we get to. But I wouldn't start with the premise that you have to have $2 trillion, because if that's the mark and you can't get there, you say, oh, then we can't do it. I'd like to see an infrastructure bill go and start building and see how far you can get.
Have you told your friend the president this?
I talked to the president. I just called last night. I've talked to him a lot. And the thing I love about the president, you need somebody who pushes you, who can dream big, and set a framework. This is a man who is a builder, right? So if you walk in, you say, well, I think we could do 500 billion. No, let's make it $1 trillion. Let's make it $2 trillion. I mean, he understands where the infrastructure is in this country, so he wants to push us to as far as we can get.
So how do you explain to him that you want to go small or ball, but something that might get done?
Look, I look at what's capable. I've got to get to 218 on the floor inside the House. So how can we meet the criteria of what we need to build this nation? It's, to me, infrastructure helps us compete. It helps us from a standpoint of delivering goods faster, the time that people spend on a road and others. And it's a need that's been neglected for quite a while. But then I also look at the greatest threat to our nation is our debt. So the way that we finance it is pretty important. And I think there's creative ways out there, public-private partnerships that give you flexibility as well. I'd love to see other pilot programs that would give states greater flexibility and new ways to do it.
So are you optimistic about getting one of these more doable projects you're talking about here done this year? Not the big kahuna, but some steps forward on infrastructure.
I would really like to. Look, I will work with anybody who wants to work to move it forward. I think infrastructure can really be a bipartisan one. The challenge is what I'm seeing coming from committees. The majority gets to set the tone of where it's happening. And if I look at the tone, it seems almost that they're more interested in subpoenas than solutions. If we start focusing on solutions, the Mueller report's done, there's no collusion, there's no obstruction, let's move on. But that's a real problem.
Do you think that Speaker Pelosi and the Democrats are overplaying their hand on investigations?
Yeah, by far. I mean, think of this. When they came in, if you just watched a hearing yesterday in Judiciary, this is Chairman Nadler's committee. They had 4 witnesses. Witnesses from the Democrats, witnesses from the Republicans. And these are expert witnesses in regards to subpoenas and looking at their attorneys. So they asked a question. The subpoena that Chairman Nadler sent to Attorney General Barr, they asked all of them, Republican and Democrat. For the Attorney General to abide by that subpoena, would he had to have broken the law? They all said yes. But they held him in contempt. So the question to Attorney General Barr, if you don't want to be held in contempt, you have to break the law. Do you want to uphold the rule of law or be in contempt? They haven't brought that to the floor because I think they're embarrassed by what happened. But it almost seems like once they took the majority, they laid out a framework for impeachment, waiting for the Mueller report because they wanted to go first. They said, no, let's wait for the Mueller report. And then they found out that Schiff and other had lied to the American public for the last 2 years. No, that's not true. And then they didn't know where to move to, so they tried to go down a different path. I think if you follow the trail of Democrats who are running for president, Iowa and other, they don't get asked about the Mueller report. They get asked about health care, infrastructure, trade. Those are the things that America wants. And I really believe if you sat back, if they walked outside of their conference, they're so angry that if they listened to the public, they'd focus on something different.
Do you believe that Democrats will begin impeachment proceedings?
If they were left to their conference, they would. But you'd have to have a reason.
And so you're now predicting that based on the Mueller report, that will not happen?
There's no basis for it.
So you would say it's unlikely, or you would say it's not going to happen?
Nothing's unlikely in that conference, so but I don't know why they would want to.
Do you believe that House Democrats will eventually, one way or the other, get the president's tax returns?
They're focused on a tax return. Now let's look at that for a moment. This is concerning to me, and take partisanship out of it. But when a party controls government and they weaponize something, that they dislike you. Do we have a history of this? I watched the IRS get weaponized and go after people for their philosophical beliefs before an election and get audited. I watched an administration go in and dislike what press is doing, and they went after their call logs unbeknownst to them. Remember in the AP? They went after one individual at Fox News, grabbed 2 months of his phone logs. That was the last administration. That's power. That's fearful. I don't want any administration to use their government against an individual because they philosophically disagree with it. Everybody who runs for office has to fill out a financial disclosure statement. This is just that you dislike somebody. Then they ask for 10 years when you're not even in. Then they go after your children. This is a step too far, and I hope they take a deep breath and move forward.
Those who are tweeting along at Axios, hashtag Axios360, a step too far. You're a Californian. You spend a lot of time in Silicon Valley. You talk to top tech executives. What are they most worried about?
Well, you hear a lot of talk out there, people say about, it's interesting, in a presidential campaign and with so many people running, we got de Blasio today, interesting. They'll say anything to try to get attention because there's so many running. So now they just want to break everything up. Well, when I look at something, what does that accomplish? I really think what people should look at about privacy, right? Technology changed so much of our lives, and it's moving so quickly. You're holding up that phone? That has more technology in today and more power than Apollo when it landed on the moon. And it's only going to get faster and better in that process. But what also is happening is we're releasing a lot of the data about ourselves, and do we really quite know it? So you have states individually doing privacy questions. That's not good because you want one framework overall. You've got questions about breaking it up. But if you broke up, say you broke up WhatsApp, does that do anything to our privacy or help us? No. Let me ask you this one question. What if the U.S. Postal Service decided that they would give you the stamps for free, that you can mail a letter for free? But they're going to do this. Because they're mailing your letter for free, they're going to help you. They're going to read your letter. And in reading your letter, they find out you're concerned about a certain topic, so they're going to send you an ad for a really good book that can help you. Or that you're really interested in a vacation, so they send you about Universal Studios, Disneyland. And they find out your mother-in-law's coming to visit you, so they send her a really nice hotel close by that she could stay at, right? Would that be okay? Well, if you use Gmail, that's exactly what's happening to you. Do you think Alexa Our Siri only listen to you when you ask them to? I don't know, but it seems kind of odd to me. Sometimes they talk to me and I never said a word to them. Our privacy is being captured. These companies are doing something for free. Oh, I don't know. They make a lot of money. Their stock's pretty good. They're taking that data and selling it somewhere. Do you know what that is? Are we being honest? That's a big fear I have, that they have not been honest in the process. So if you want to talk about a breakup, I don't think that's right. But if one company and you search on the internet, 95% of all those searches go through Google, that's a lot of power, is it not? If in there when you start to search, they give you those little queries, those 4 different things. If I put one negative thing in there, subliminally, that'll be the first thing you pick. If you end up on the second page of a search, you know what happens? 90% of the people drop away. It's an algorithm, so don't worry about it. But who writes an algorithm? An individual writes an algorithm, right? So if I looked up the California Republican Party 2 weeks before the election, what would it say about us? Well, it said our ideology was Nazism. Well, it's all right. That's an algorithm that did that. It's not personal. Or what did they put up if I typed something in? All the news stories that could be negative. This is a concern I have, and it's something that they ought to deal with. Otherwise, you get this extreme who comes in and says, just break up. I want to have a level playing field where there's competition.
So what you're saying there is that Google actively targets conservatives, Republicans.
I think they target a lot of people, but I think when you look at the process of what's gone through, I have a concern and a question of what comes up. If you Google the word Trump, what would come up? You have an unbelievable amount of power if 95% of every search is going to come through you, and that you're going to and 90% are going to drop off by the second page. What's other on that first page is influence. If we looked at what they had done before. The ability to influence individuals to go vote, and did they target individuals who they wanted to go vote? Did they have a meeting like this right after the election? Were they cheerful? Did they say, all right, we had an election, we're a company, let's move forward? No, they cried. They held each other. How terrible for the nation. Did they decide in Google that they could no longer work with the Department of Defense of the United States government? Yeah. But is there questions that they're working with China? Oh, yeah. China doesn't control their economy, controls their people. They rate you in China on what you say. You may say something very bad, so your child's not going to college.
So that's
concerning to me.
You've talked a lot about conservative bias by the platforms. Since you've raised this issue, you've met with the Twitter CEO, Jack Dorsey, others. As you've had these conversations, as you've looked more into this, are you more concerned, more convinced that the platforms are biased against conservatives, or have you been reassured?
I get concerned, and the reason why I raised the attention and brought...
More concerned as you've looked into it.
More concerned because the power of what you have, okay? You cannot sit back and say it's just an algorithm because you have thousands of people who work for you that could actually do something about it. In Facebook, when I raised the concern, you know what happened? Conservatives in Facebook spoke up because they felt they were being almost unwanted in a nature, so they created their own area. Before Jack came to testify, they said they didn't do certain things. But what's interesting, these CEOs, right before they testify, then they'll acknowledge the things that we have been concerned about. Oh, yeah, that did happen, but we corrected it.
So you're saying Facebook shouldn't be broken up, but...
Facebook shouldn't be broken up, but they should be very honest about what is the data that they're using and what they're taking. If they're going to sell the data, the question should be, well, if that's my data, should I get some money for it? If it's my data, when I leave your platform, can my data leave with me? Am I going to opt out or opt in? It needs to be an honest approach of where it's going. And this is almost generational. If you are in the younger generation, you don't care about your data. Somebody older does. But my point is, you can't take it from someone without their knowledge. And don't put this big old long thing you have to read to just agree to and say you agreed to something. If I search something in Google and they say, oh, they don't keep it, yeah, they keep it for 3 years. If you and I talk about some book, why do I get an advertisement about it?
Last one. Do you think Facebook listens to you?
I don't know. I hope they listen to my ideas.
No, but you say you talk about a book, you get an ad for it. Like, do you believe...
That's not Facebook. If you listen to your phone, it's Siri or it's Alexa, and now we find it that someone was just talking and packages show up to their house.
You do believe that occurs. You do believe the phone listens to you.
It has the capability of listening. How do you think these countries come and spy on individuals? Why do you think you can't take your phone into a SCIF? Why do you think that most of us, when we pick up our computers, we have a little tape over the camera? Why do they wonder about if you go into a hotel room and you're worried about someone spying on you, the television itself can listen to the process? Technology allows us to wire one another together and capture something that other people cannot. So it's how sophisticated that you want. Why did WhatsApp just tell everybody that uses it that, oh, you got to go refresh the app because we found that there was a hole in it?
Last one on this. You don't think Facebook should be broken up, but you think the government should do what?
Well, I think from a process, we should deal with privacy on a national level. Now, let's talk about technology. Let's go WhatsApp, YouTube, Facebook, Google. Those are all big, powerful companies, right? Yeah, they're all controlled by two. You know, what I'm concerned about, too, is these big, powerful companies were small things inside a garage. Is that still capable of today? Or do they try to muscle out and let new competition either buy them out or just sue them and not let them grow? That's a concern I have. I want innovation to continue, but I also have this other concern. If you're not going to work with the U.S. Defense Department, I have a real question if you're going to work with AI with China. That's a concern I have. Because if I take back for a moment, I understand we're all companies and we're individuals. But what if companies in 1938 or 40 decided that they weren't about America, they were a world company? And they're going to work with Germany or they're going to work with Japan, but they're not going to work with America. That's a concern to me, because whoever has AI, it's unbelievable power that we can do. We can cure cancer. But you know, with the internet, ISIS has a hard time of recruiting without it. There's good and bad with it, and we should put some parameters about it and understand it, but able it to foster and grow in a fair manner that there's new competition.
You clearly think there should be a privacy law. The U.S. isn't capable of passing something big like Europe's GDPR, right?
Yeah.
Nothing sweeping. So you think it should be done in pieces, kind of like infrastructure, right?
Well, look, I would like to do one, and the thing about technology changing all the time, you'll have to adapt.
Yeah. So what's the
upgrade
first one? Where would you start?
I would start with the privacy itself on a framework of what individuals know when they're going through from an honesty approach. And there's a bipartisan bill over in the Senate.
Wait, what would that bill do?
Well, what I would say is you can't do these dark circles where you come in and grab somebody's data without their knowledge. You can't trick them into the process. It has to be an upfront framework. This is the data we want to take from you. And if we can have this data from you, you're either going to supply you with money, or if you leave the platform, your data goes with you. To me, that is a fair place to start, and let's start with a foundation and grow from there, and I think everybody can deal with that.
You hope the House Republicans' historic 2010 wave. You retook the House. How do you repeat, as you just predicted, in 2020?
Okay, quickly, you cannot win the majority without understanding why you lost the majority, okay? So there's a number of reasons why we lost. The first one is history. The party in power that wins the White House, on average, in the first off-year election, loses at least 32 seats. Well, we surpassed that, but that's what happened. Secondly, we had too many Republicans retire in a year that wind was in our face, 41, the most we ever had. So the front line actually comes closer to you. Democrats did a few things that I didn't think was right, but was smart on their part. They got redistricting done, which is only supposed to be done every 10, in Pennsylvania, so they automatically picked up 3 new seats before the election. They changed the election law in Maine, not for the state, but just for the federal offices, that you don't vote for one person, you rank them. So there's only 2 seats there, but the Republican who ran for re-election, he got the most votes, but he didn't get to become a member of Congress, because what happened is he didn't get to 50%, he got like 48. So the last person who drops out, whoever they voted for second. So there's a person sitting in Congress today that didn't get the most votes, but he got some second votes, so let's have him in. Then in California, they changed and allowed you to harvest ballots, which is very concerning about the safety of our ballots when you do that. So I had 4 members of Congress lose 3 weeks after the election. David Valadao, the day after the election, was ahead by 6 points, but ends up losing with 900. Now, the intensity level was on the Democrat side. They turned out 8% higher than Republicans. But if you take the 74 swing seats that make up the majority, the difference is 1%. The difference between sitting in the minority and being in the majority, about 107,000 votes. Not much, right? So intensity. They had more money. Bloomberg's money made a real difference. He gave them 100
So how do you
million.
get intensity on your side this time?
It's going to be great, because now the Democrats have to run on their policies, okay? And this is like if
Wait, you have to run on the president.
Yeah. So we're going to run on the greatest economy that ever happened in the last 50 years. I'll run on that. Because you know what? Not one Democrat voted for that tax bill. Okay? I'm going to talk about changing the VA, talking about dealing with opioids, talking about ending human trafficking online. Yeah, I'm going to run on all these different things. What are they going to run on? It's going to be a debate between socialism versus freedom, control versus freedom. You know, this is a debate it's kind of like if you're ever in a schoolyard and you get in a fight and the teacher breaks it up. What happens? After school, you have to fight again, right? Because no one knows who won. This has been brewing for quite some time. This Democratic Party is much different than they've been before. They're not, you know, Bernie Sanders didn't start out by registering as a Democrat. He took his honeymoon to the Soviet Union. He is honest about his beliefs. It is a socialist belief. The current new leadership in the freshman Democratic Party is socialism. They're not shy about it.
Do you agree with the president's tweet that Vice President Biden will be the Democratic nominee?
No. I think Biden, no disrespect, is the Jeb Bush of this cycle. I think he could have run at a different time and he would have been the nominee. I think he has too much to apologize for. And the Democrats, remember, structure dictates behavior. They changed the structure of how they elect. California's moved forward, but it's not winner take all. They eliminated the superdelegates in the first round. That was to protect them not to let the far left win, and that's what stopped Bernie Sanders before. You got to have money to sustain yourself all the way through. I think Bernie Sanders has a much better chance because he has a bigger base for a longer duration of the time.
You're a constituent of Senator Harris. What about her?
I would like her to accomplish something before in the Senate before. No disrespect, but I'd like her to have more experience and accomplish something in the Senate beforehand.
As we say goodbye, at the age of 21, you started a small business, Kevin O's Deli. You told me backstage one sentence you learned about human behavior from running Kevin O's Deli.
Two things. First, if you're a small business owner, three items. First to work, last to leave, last to be paid. Customer service matters. You may think you designed something that's perfect. The customer doesn't like it, you better adapt or you won't survive. And I think when we talk about who we're running with, this president heard a voice no one else would listen to. You might get upset. He's a disruptor. He's the exact same person he said when he ran, and he's accomplishing things he would promise to do. I look forward to the November election. Thank you very much.
Rita McCarthy, thanks for joining Axios.